In Pennsylvania, we know that the demand for STEM jobs is growing 3 times as fast as the demand for non-STEM jobs. We also know that an estimated 300,000 STEM jobs will be available in the Commonwealth by 2026. Women make up half the workforce, but only 25% of those employed in STEM jobs. In 2015, the Vinci Science Center established the Women in STEM Initiative, or Women in Science and Engineering Initiative, as part of our broader commitment to supporting aspiring young girls and practicing female professionals in STEM fields. At the mentoring dinner, this room was filled with all of you, 350 women of all ages. Those today who are accomplished scientists and engineers and faculty members in our area colleges, and those tomorrow, all of you high school students and college students who will be responsible for the scientific and technological breakthroughs that will help people across the planet live healthier, happier, more productive lives. And now we're pleased to welcome their family members and friends and colleagues and supporters for a public panel discussion with an incredible group of distinguished female scientists and engineers. I really look forward to their comments tonight. I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize some members of the audience, many of whom made tonight's evening possible. First, I'd like to recognize the staff and volunteers from the Vinci Science Center. Would all the Science Center professionals in the audience please stand? I know there are many of you. I came around to your tables. Thank you. You are the ones that made tonight possible and bring science to life and lives to science for so many every day. I especially want to recognize Sharon Alexander, who choreographed and led the charge for this event, including the first date, which as you all know got snowed out, and then regrouped and was able to put together the second date with an incredible attendance. Sharon, please come up. So organized. She gives me all the materials, totally ready, and everything I need to know, and it's seamless. And there are never any challenges because she's taking care of them, so we cannot thank her enough. Next, I want to thank our Girl Scout volunteers. These young ladies served as hostesses for our panelists and will help again later with the question and answer portion of tonight's evening. Our presenting sponsor this evening is Sanofi Pasteur. Our distinguished panelist, Tamala Mallet-Moore, is here this evening representing them. Thanks to the generosity of Sanofi Pasteur, we have several attendees this evening from Monroe County. We also had several hundred middle school students from the Pocono Mountain region attend our recent Healthcare and Women in STEM Career Connection Days at the Da Vinci Science Center. Thank you to Sanofi. We'd also like to recognize, and some of you heard some of these thank yous earlier, but we have a broader audience now, so I'd like to take a moment to recognize again the following sponsors who provided additional support for this evening and for other WISE programming throughout the year. These include the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is a federal agency, ATAS International, the Dorothy and Dexter Baker Foundation, Lutron, the Manufacturers Resource Center and the Dream Team, Air Products, DeSales University, and Lafayette College. We are so grateful for the commitment by these organizations to advancing women in STEM careers. So those organizations provide support throughout the whole year for all of our Women in STEM activities. There are several other organizations here this evening that provided financial support to enable the largest group of high school and college students ever to attend the forum and the mentoring dinner beforehand. Thanks to the generosity of our sponsors, this year we were able to invite every high school student who applied to participate in the event, something we've never been able to do before. All of the sponsors are listed in the program. Please join me in a round of applause to thank each and every one. And finally, I'd like to thank and introduce Erin Armstrong, Associate Director of Sterilization at Febron Medical. Hopefully Oh, there she is, good. Erin serves as co-chair of our WISE Advisory Council, who along with Dr. Katie Warlow, who's not able to join us due to a prior business commitment. The WISE Advisory Council oversees the WISE initiative at Da Vinci. Erin will tell you a little more about our WISE initiative and will introduce the moderator of our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm thrilled to be here this evening in tonight's event. I'd like to take a few moments to tell you about the WISE initiative and to invite you to join the WISE network of female STEM professionals. As Lynn said, we are committed to supporting female STEM professionals through our WISE network, while also working to mentor young women through events like this one to fill the STEM gap in the future. The WISE network has 3 primary goals. Number 1, to directly mentor young girls who are interested in STEM. Number 2, to connect professional women employed in STEM fields, creating a community of STEM professionals who support one another through networking, social events, and mentoring. And number 3, to bring passion, insight, expertise, and resources to advise the Vinci Science Center on strategies for developing girls' interest and achievement in STEM. The network is headed by our WISE Advisory Council, which some members are here this evening. Thank you very much, ladies. The Da Vinci Science Center offers a number of programs and events throughout the year to introduce students to STEM career pathways, and to engage female STEM professionals and provide them opportunities to network and support each other. In addition to tonight's WISE Forum, there's a Women in STEM Career Connection Field Trip Days, a STEM Girls After School Club, and even professional development programs for teachers, professional development programs. The Da Vinci Science Center's WISE initiative has garnered national attention and federal funding through the Institute of Museum and Library Services, otherwise known as IMLS. With the support of a 2-year grant from IMLS, the Da Vinci Science Center is partnering with area colleges and universities and community organizations like the Girl Scouts of Eastern PA to identify how we can best serve aspiring and practicing female STEM professionals and develop programs that address the needs of area women and girls. Our goal is to enhance the STEM learning and support ecosystem for women and girls in Lehigh Valley and the surrounding communities in eastern Pennsylvania. We are currently conducting a research study as part of this grant and look forward to sharing the results later this spring. Now we are ready to begin the formal part of the program. I would like to introduce Jean Keeler, who is moderating our panel this evening.
Much for the question. I think one of the most fascinating things about the STEM world, in the past I think you had some very straightforward career paths, and it was really, you had very few choices. And what I see in the STEM world now is that you can make the career almost anything you want it to be. So I would say, starting out as a child, I knew that I wanted to be a physician and I wanted to work in business and research, but I really didn't know what that looked like. Now I'm all grown up and I'm at a pharmaceutical company. In the job that I have, you have to have a background as a physician and experience as a physician. But I also have the opportunity to interact with the research world every day. So I think that's the most fascinating thing about having a career in STEM now. It's not so cut and dry, or what it used to be, back in the day when only men had the job. I think you can make it so much more today.
And following up on what Tamala had said is your career pathway anymore is not linear. My career pathway, I started off in a STEM field, working in toxicology for many years, and then I branched out, and now I'm working in a government role where I see things from entirely the other side, and trying to encourage individuals to enter into STEM fields because there's so many jobs in Pennsylvania. So it's a different way of looking at it, but there are some things that I've taken from my STEM experience. STEM is a lot of problem solving, analytical thought, and so I went from a world that was analytical and logical to a world that's completely illogical because it's government, right? So, it's a total difference, but my perspective never changed, and I think that really helps a lot in trying to be successful in bringing logic and data analysis and fact-based decision-making to a world that often isn't in.
So my perspective on STEM is one of the great things about it, especially for all of the young women that are in this room that are interested in math or science or technology, is that there are just so many opportunities. So if you have a curiosity and you like to ask why, you like to ask how, there will be a place that you will fit in the STEM world. I always like to say at Air Products, one of the reasons people stay so long is we come in as engineers, but there's 100 careers under one roof. So you can come in as an engineer in a STEM, which is one of the STEM fields, and try something like process engineering. And if you don't like it, you can move on to something like project engineering, or you can go into technical sales. And so being in engineering, which is my field, really gives you the basis to do more than one thing. So you're not limited to what you think you're just studying in school. You might study mechanical engineering. It doesn't mean that you are limited to just doing things in the mechanical engineering field. So again, the reason I think STEM is important and a great place to be is that there are just so many opportunities under the roof of one company, or you can move around from company to company.
Thank you. When I was first asked to do this, I said to whoever asked me, I don't even recall, am I in a STEM field? Because I didn't think I was, but I was a biology major. So I was a biology major here, and then I went to law school. So I can tell you that science background, that science degree, was the perfect background for law school. So if anybody's thinking about becoming a scientist in college and taking a science major or STEM major and then moving, or an engineering major, those are fabulous lawyers. And thinking about law school, you couldn't ask for a better background than a STEM background. You will be surrounded by people who took political science and history as majors, and you will stick out, and you will stick out in a very positive way, because you'll know how to study and you'll know how to problem solve. And so I just thought I would add that, because I took a circuitous route to where I am, but I can see where the science background helped me every step of the way. So just wanted to add that, because I was a little surprised that I had a STEM background, because I never thought about it before. Okay, Michelle, what advice would you offer to someone who's considering an education and career in STEM?
So I will speak from an engineering perspective, because that is my background. I went to school to study chemical engineering. And I would say that if you're sitting in this room and you are actually thinking about a career in STEM, don't think about it too much. I would say, just like Nike does, just do it, really. Don't be intimidated by people that might say, oh, school is so hard, it's one of the hardest degrees you can go out and try to get. And there's some truth to that. School is very hard. And you have to have an aptitude for math. It doesn't mean you're going to be doing those difficult math problems your entire career, because you won't. I will say the most difficult part about studying engineering is the 4 years you'll spend in college. Then once you get out and have that preparation that enables you to get the job that you want, it actually becomes a whole lot easier. You have the background, you've learned how to think, you've learned how to solve problems, you've learned how to work, interact well with other people, and all of that hard work that you did in college is behind you. So don't be intimidated is the advice I would give. You'll work hard through college, but there's a big reward in the end, and the opportunities that will be open up to you are tremendous. And just to build off of something you said, because I was going to mention it in here, is that I have a lot of friends that are doctors, and often they will say to me, wow, you did chemical engineering, and they'll say some of the most well-prepared people that they went to medical school with were actually people that had an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering, because they had a very different way of solving and looking at problems. So regardless of what you decide to do, if it's law school or medical school or continuing in a track in engineering, it's really a great career to have, and especially for women. You know, in our workplaces we do not have enough women, and as we all know, we need diversity of thought, we need different perspectives, and women do bring that to the workplace.
Thank you. So this is a question for whoever wants to take it. You all obviously have the technical skills to do your job, but what are the other skills, the quote-unquote soft skills, that you think you've developed through your experience, and why are those skills helpful?
Well, I could start that. I'm sure we all have a lot to add to that. So in my job, I'm on a mission to rename them from soft skills to essential skills, because there's nothing soft about it. So, you know, I've met so many young women here today, and I've been very impressed. You're engaging, you communicate, you stick your hand out and shake hands, your voice, you need your voice to be heard, you have something valuable to say, and you need to say that all the time. You know, as Michelle pointed out, we need diversity in business, we need diversity in government, we need diversity in our education system, and we need all of you to bring that to the table for us. Because this is not, you know, the world of my parents, not even the world of myself. The world is evolving and changing, and so is the workplace. And women make up 51% of the population. We sure should make up 51% of the leadership of all of our businesses.
So I will just add a little bit to that, and I will say, I think one of the pieces that was missing for me growing up is really being in a very challenging team sport environment. I think men always have that environment, whether they're playing pickup basketball or whether they're on the basketball team. They are taught a little bit earlier than women are and how to be team players, how to choose a leader on a team, and how to collectively work together to get things done. And for me, it was, I would say, much later in life when I developed that skill. So take advantage of the opportunities that you have. If you have an opportunity to play team sports or intramural sports in college, take that opportunity and really learn from it, because when you come into the workforce, you guys are learning a little bit differently than we did. So high school has you have a lot of group projects and team things that you need to do. Was not really that way for us. We had individual things we needed to do, or maybe you had a partner in your science class. But take advantage of learning how to be on a team and how to rely on each other's strengths and weaknesses to get through the project, because it's a very valuable skill to have when you're in the real world.
I would just like to say I completely agree with Eileen. These are not soft skills. They're hard. And there's something that you may have innately, but you should practice them. And you should learn about them. And so I don't want to hire anyone who doesn't have those skills. And we have about 2,000 people working for us, and I don't want anyone in any of our positions that aren't good listeners, don't have emotional intelligence, don't understand leadership and practice it, are not good parts of good teammates. And those are things you should learn about and study and be deliberate about. So the soft skills are not very soft, and they're very hard to learn. So if you don't have them innately, and even if you do, you should practice them. So that would be my advice, whether you're a young girl or a young boy. Those are the skills that will make you succeed. You're expected to have good technical skills. Everybody who works at most of our companies are expected to have really good technical skills. The things that will make you stand out are the so-called soft skills. They're the ones that will make you the leaders. So that's the advice I give both my children, my son and my daughter. That background, how have your technical skills, your STEM skills helped you in your current line of work?
I touched on this a little bit before, talking about bringing logic to sometimes illogical process. But when I worked in toxicology, you had a problem. You had to figure out what chemical was in the system and how much. So there was a problem and there was an answer. And that's what I try to bring to my job right now. We have lots of problems in the state. We have businesses that cannot find enough workers, in particular in STEM fields, in all of our healthcare fields, IT. It's remarkable to me how businesses are struggling to find qualified workers. So when we sit down and we look at a problem like this, what we want to do is let's figure out what are the numbers, what is the data, how do we get from point A to point B? And my background, I think, brings that to the table. I work with a lot of individuals who their background is public policy. And they'll look at something from an ideological or philosophical way and spend a lot more time trying to analyze the problem from their point of view. But I'm more direct. I want to get an answer to the problem because the problem is immediate in the state. So, and that's what I think brings my STEM background, that's what I think brings to my benefit in my job.
All right, again, a question for everyone. I know that you have all had the opportunity to do quite a bit of travel, and some of you travel internationally often through your jobs. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of those experiences and what you've learned as a result of your time spent in other countries?
So I can take that. One of the best things about my job at Air Products, and one of the reasons I stayed when I started there, is I started to do international travel early in my career. I grew up in New York, and I never thought I'd stay in Pennsylvania. I was going to go right back to New York, but I didn't. I had the opportunity to travel throughout Latin America and Asia and Europe, and I think travel is an education in and of itself. So the more you travel, the more places you go, and the more personally enriching that is. So in addition to doing work in those countries, you get a very big personal satisfaction out of it. I think the other thing that I learned that you will all learn once you start to travel and you get out into the workplace is, I think in general, we all have unconscious biases, and often we will tend to stereotype different cultures, different societies, just because they're different from ours. And one thing you learn from traveling is that people are very much like us. They just grow up, in a different culture. And I'll just share my most recent experience because it was probably the one I learned the most from. I was asked about a month ago to travel for work to Saudi Arabia. And we all have ideas of Saudi Arabia because it's very different from our culture. And I went and I had to wear a cover and a habib and cover my face. And you look around and everyone does look a little bit different because the women do have their faces covered. And I had the opportunity to have dinner with women in the office. And we sat around a table like this and started just talking about all the same things I would talk to about with my girlfriends at home. And I had this instant connection that these women look very different and they grow up in a different society and with different cultural norms. But deep down inside, we're really all the same, and we all had the same fears and concerns, and we talked about husbands and boyfriends and all the things that we would normally talk about. And to me, it just opened up my whole, I had a different feeling about Saudi Arabia than I did when I went there. So it was, despite all the traveling I've done through all different countries in the world over my 33-year career, it was just another learning experience that I continue to have by traveling internationally.
I think she's a tough act to follow, so I've hesitated a little bit. I have the opportunity every day to work on global teams, and I think I've been working on global teams since about 2005, 3, so maybe about 15 or 16 years, I have the opportunity to manage individuals in other countries, as well as travel to those countries. But the biggest thing, and I'll talk more about the experience of working on a global team than the travel. So for us, in any typical day, I may start a teleconference at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. It may be 1 o'clock somewhere else. It may be 5 p.m. somewhere else. And for someone else, it could be 7 o'clock at night. So the teams are very international. You have to keep that in perspective when you're having discussions with the team. You also have to take into account the different communication types and the different, I would say, cultural influences. I have found personally that it has been very difficult to work with some cultures and very easy to work with others. But because I work on such a grand scale internationally, I've taken the opportunity to take several courses about communicating with others and how culture influences them. And I keep a book on my desk called The Culture Map. And sometimes I'm having a conversation with someone, and sometimes the conversation on the phone and in email doesn't translate the way someone thinks that it translates. So one of the key things that I have learned is that if you don't understand it during the meeting or in the email, sometimes it's just better to pick up the phone and have that conversation with them again. But at the end of the day, nothing beats a face-to-face meeting with people. So it's very important to be able to travel and have those face-to-face meetings. The understanding is just so much easier then. The other thing that I pick up is just, being in medicine, we have different socioeconomic classes. So in the U.S., we have low and middle and high income classes. But then when we're thinking about countries around the world, we think about low-income countries, middle-income countries, and high-income countries, and what's available. And just being cognizant and aware that the resources that you have available at your fingertips, even if you're low-income in this country, could be so much different than what someone would have in a low- and middle-income country. And thinking about those challenges and how to deliver the health care is very important.
So Tamala, let's talk about persistence. Can you tell us about a time in your career that you would consider the hardest moment or the hardest time when you felt like you wanted to give up? How did you persevere? What kept you going?
So there are a lot of moments in my career, and there are a lot of moments, there are fewer moments in school. But I think the one that's probably the most impactful, the one that people in this room, in this age group, maybe could relate to the most is, and I'm peeling back the onion here, so I'm being completely transparent. At the end of my second year of medical school is when I was expected to take my first board examination. So step 1 of the medical exams, you take step 1 at the end of year 2, and somewhere between year 3 and year 4, you take step 2, and then first year of residency, you'll take step 3. And you need all 3 of those steps to eventually get a state license. And that's not the same as the boards that you would need to pass once you complete your residency and become board certified. But at the end of second year of medical school, the first time I took the boards, I failed them. And I was devastated because it was the first time I failed anything. And so, it was very difficult, but I think about the tortoise and the hare. It's not the fastest one that finishes the race, it's the most consistent. And I got through this with the support of my girlfriends. And so I had some very supportive girlfriends around me who were in medical school, but I also had some very supportive friends around me from graduate school. And it was my graduate school girlfriends they were my graduate school girlfriends, but they had gone to med school. Those were the ones who said, come and stay with me for a month or 2 months. I will put you on a schedule. I will teach you how to study to pass the boards. And I have one girlfriend who was in her residency program. I wouldn't see her for 4 or 5 days at a time, but she would cook me breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and she would leave it, and she put up a schedule, and she put these note cards on the wall all over her apartment, and that, you know, I had my homework. So I had the schedule, and with support of good people around you, with your support of your network, it really can be very supportive. And I think the last thing, you know, was just the drive inside of me. I wasn't a person who was going to give up, but it sure was very comforting to have that network around me who could support me, redirect me, and help me to achieve the goal.
So my worst moment was my first day of law school. And I got called on in contracts. And I didn't know anything about law school, so that's a weird and strange story, but somehow I ended up in law school. And I was made to stand up, and I was humiliated for an hour by the law school professor, who just kept telling me how stupid I was and how I didn't belong there. So this was like a million years ago, because you'll know this, on a paid phone. And said, I'm not coming back. And he said, okay, don't go back. You're not going to go back there. They don't get to treat you like that. And I said, but we borrowed all the money for the semester. And so sometimes it's the funny things that keep you going. It's a bit of stubbornness, plus I had no idea how I would pay that money back if I didn't finish law school. So I decided, I came home and I said to my husband, I'm going to get an A from that guy, just because I was stubborn. And I did. By the time I got that A, it didn't mean that much because I was exhausted and law school was hard. But 5 years later, when I was interviewing for my first job that wasn't with a county agency, the person interviewed me, asked me where I went to law school. I told him Villanova. He asked me who my contracts professor was. I told him who it was. He asked me what my mark was. I said I got an A. He made me prove it to him, and I got that job. So you never know. Sometimes being stubborn and persistent, and you're not going to let them get you down, and you're not going to let anybody tell you you're stupid. You'll get a job 5 years later. You just never know. So. Because he got a B from that same professor. And he's still my very good friend. Eileen, in your current role, you oversee the Commonwealth workforce, the entire workforce system. Can you comment on the future of STEM jobs in Pennsylvania?
I can say it shortly, very bright. Right now in Pennsylvania, healthcare is one of the fastest growing occupations, and for a number of reasons, right? We have an aging population in the state. That aging population is retiring from the workforce and being a bigger consumer of healthcare initiatives in the state. We have IT. Right now we're in the middle of what everyone is referring to as a technology disruption. We're totally changing. Think of the way technology changes your life. I was thinking this the other day. I was in Sam's Club maybe a year ago. They had 2 of the automated checkers where you check yourself out. I was there last week. They were almost all that way. The changes, how many people have not gone in a bank? When's the last time you went inside a bank? Banking has changed. Our finance industry has changed. Healthcare, totally changing how automation is taking over in healthcare. But what we need now We need people to program the technology. We need people to repair the technology. This is a fast growth area in the state and in the nation of all our technology. When you look at the construction industry, we have technology in the construction industry. There is nowhere where it doesn't touch. I was reading an article a few weeks ago. It said of the jobs that our kindergartners are going to get when they graduate, 65% of them don't exist yet. That's hard to believe. How are we going to keep up with all those jobs? And it's all of you entering into these STEM fields, because what we're finding right now, it's not about occupations. It's not about going to school to learn for an occupation. It's going to school to learn for a skill set. And the biggest skill sets that are helpful to you is problem solving, communication, the ability to work in a team. And those things will carry you far, and those things are what come out of STEM fields.
Okay, and one last question before we get your questions, and this goes to everyone on the panel. Tell us about an accomplishment or a triumph from your career in STEM of which you are especially proud.
Sure. So what I'm most proud of is not necessarily related to STEM, it's just something I'm proud of as a result of being in the career that I'm in. And it's a stack of notes that I keep in my desk drawer that I've gotten throughout the years from people that have just sent me a note, looking up to me or thanking me for the mentorship relationship I've had with them, people that have thanked me for having having faith in them and pushing them ahead when maybe they doubted themselves and have ended up in a better place. And so when I think of what I'm most proud of, it's doing just that. It's providing support and confidence to the people around me that I think deserve it. And that just brings me great personal satisfaction to see others do well. So that's what I'm most proud of.
I have a similar thought to that. What I've been really striving for in my organization, in the Department of Labor and Industry, is to increase the number of women in leadership roles. And we have really strived very hard to increase the numbers in our supervisory roles. But the thing that I think I'm most proud of is I've convinced our male supervisors how big of a goal that is, and I have them buying into it and them believing that they need to promote based on everybody's skills, and looking for opportunities for women to move up in our organization.
So I think I'll take a little bit of a different stance. I can identify with both of those perspectives. I certainly have a stack of I would say correspondence from patients and from people that I've mentored. I certainly promote diversity at work, being a member of the Women Inspiring Sanity Excellence, which is a WISE organization at work. But probably the thing that I'm most proud of right now is the work that I've been able to do in maternal immunizations. In partnership with Sanofi Pasteur, in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in partnership with the Brighton Collaboration in Switzerland. And it certainly is redirecting and driving the field in terms of what vaccines we are providing for women, how that will help women who are pregnant get through with more successful outcomes and live births, live deliveries, and also the protection it will provide some of the infants in the first few months of life before they're able to get fully vaccinated themselves. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of right now.
Thank you all very much. Have more fun? I definitely would say that. I bet we were all really good students that worked really hard and sometimes you should have some fun. And don't tell my daughter I said that.
You know, one thing, we were talking about it when we had dinner. I wish I took more opportunities to travel abroad when I was in high school, when I was in college. So if you have those opportunities, please make sure you take them, because I think you'll be very happy you did.
And one thing, again, sharing with the young women at the table, they did ask that question: what would you have done in high school? And the one thing I wish I would have done more of is, you know, I always knew I liked math and science, so that's where I put my efforts. But I wish I would have done more in terms of joining things like the debate club or Toastmasters, or things that would help me be a better extemporaneous speaker, or that would give me more confidence speaking, because I did lack that, as I'm up here talking to all of you. But it is in the workplace something that when I started working, I didn't have that self-confidence, and I think doing something that's not engineering related, such as debate or you know, Model UN, anything like that would have been very helpful to me.
So I think the thing that I would say is really develop a hobby and stick with it, and also develop good habits and stick with those. So it's very important as you become a woman in STEM, you will have other responsibilities to a husband, to a household, to children. So it's very important for you to remember some of the things that you're being taught now at home. Have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Have 2 snacks. Make sure they're healthy. Get up and walk often. But really understand what you like to do. What are your hobbies? Are you a big aerobics fan? Are you a big biker? Take those good exercise habits with you from high school and college, and keep those with you as part of your daily routine when you go into the workforce, because it serves so many purposes. It keeps you healthy, it gives you some time to decompress and think about your day and get things off of your chest. So it's very important to have those really healthy habits.
Okay, we have a question from Carolyn Ruiz from Bebron Medical. Up to the mic.
I don't know why I'm first. I didn't want to be the first, but I am. So I'm Caroline Ruiz. Thank you for your comments. I think you're an inspiration for every one of us right now. And my question is, because 2 weeks ago I was reading an article, and the title was, "We are no woman in STEM anymore, we are scientists, we are engineers." So my question would be, how do you see us in the future? Are we going to be majority? Are we going to still struggling, fighting for our place in the world, or how do you see us in STEM in the future?
So it would be my hope that in the future we're in a better place than we are today when it comes to representation of women in the workforce in the STEM fields. But I do think it begins with all of us. We really need to encourage young women to enter STEM fields. We need to set good examples for them. So, you know, the more women that enter STEM and the more people they have to look up to, the more likely they are to enter those fields. I think it's slow though. I think it's much slower than any of us would like. And I think it's getting better, but I don't think it's getting better fast enough. I mentioned to somebody earlier today that I went to speak at a high school earlier this week, and to a principals of engineering class. They combined 2 classes. There was 48 students in there, and there were 5 women. And so I think if we're not encouraging young women at the high school level to be interested in engineering and in STEM fields, it's going to continue to be a slow roll. So I think everybody here does have a responsibility to provide that mentorship and that leadership and encouragement if we want to see it go better, faster. Thank you.
And I'd add that I think the key to making it move faster is women aspiring to leadership roles. that mentorship is extremely important, but I think having women as leaders and CEOs of these companies, I think will move that in a faster direction.
And so from my perspective, what I would say is absolutely you have to have women who will support you and champion for you, but you also have to have men who champion for you and support you. And so don't be afraid to look for a male mentor, to ask that person to be your role model, and even to ask that person to guide you at work as to, you know, how to make it to the next level. Don't be afraid to do that. I was given some advice very early, I think in my pharmaceutical career, to pick a mentor, and I picked a woman. She has grown phenomenally and tremendously. She has her own talk show now. But she also encouraged me to go back and seek a male champion. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask men for what you need.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Jade Neiman.
How many years do you think STEM take?
So for an engineering degree, my degree is chemical engineering, and that took 4 years to get a bachelor's degree. And if you wanted to go on to get a master's degree, it would be 1 or 2 years, depending on the program that you're in.
So my undergraduate degree was in my STEM field, and that took 4 years. I subsequently went on for a master's degree.
I'm in medicine. It's called a School of Lifelong Learning, so you really have to be committed. It's 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, and then your residency program is still part of your education. You are a physician, but you need to complete your residency program, and that could be a 3-year program, a 4-year program, a 5-year program, a 7-year program. And then medicine changes at a tremendous rate with all the technology that we're talking about in STEM. I mean, there was a time where you had to go to the hospital and look at the labs and look at the x-rays or look at the OB scan in order to know what your patient was doing or how you could treat them, and now you can just look at everything on your cell phone. Which doesn't seem so amazing to you guys, but it is for us. And so I remember one year, maybe I think in 2014, I went and I took a board review course, and the next year I went, and it seemed like I had 5 years of change in that 1 year. So it's really the School of Lifelong Learning. You really have to be committed. But at the end of the day, when I was a little girl, people would say, well, why do you want to go to med school? It will take so long. And I calculated it out, and I said, you know, I'm going to be 28 when I finish med school. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be 28 when I'm 28. I could be 28 and be exactly what I want to be, or I could be 28 and be sad that I'm not what I want to be because it was going to take too long and I decided to do something else.
The next question is from Charlotte Humphreys.
What would you say would be the most important, or what got you the farthest essential skill life STEM careers? Like, instead of soft skill, essential.
See, now you're learning. That's it. I would say it's probably the ability to communicate. It's really important to say what you think. Your input matters, your voice matters, and you need to express that to people that they understand what you're thinking. So from my point of view, it's my ability to communicate.
I would say outside of the soft skills, depending on where you go to work, understanding the fundamentals of the business that of your employer or the business that you're working in is very important. So, you know, I'm work for Air Products, we're an industrial gas company, and understanding the fundamentals of how our business works and runs is very important.
So I would say two things. Outside of the soft skills, I think persistence is key. Don't give up. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do it. I think we all, as women, have stories, like the story of the professor on the first day of school who made you feel really uncomfortable. So persistence is very important from my perspective. I would say a soft skill that I think is very important is understanding that as you move from organization to organization, that there is a culture within the organization, and understanding what the culture is of your organization, and moving towards that culture. It's very important.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Jacob Bannock, a science teacher at Mid-Valley Secondary Center.
Lean down here a little bit. Thank you guys so much. This is such an inspiration. I was honored to bring 11 students here. This is just an amazing forum. So first off, thank you for that. As a science teacher and a father of 3 young girls, I often struggle with what advice I should give in terms of how you've, and from reading your bios and listening to you speak, you're all working moms, all extremely successful in your fields, but also working moms. How have you managed that in terms of a work balance and a mom balance? And what advice should I give to both my daughters and to my students in terms of, I know this is what I want, but I also want to be very successful in STEM. How have you individually balanced that out?
So my number one answer to that question all the time is, for women, if you're going to get married, choose your husband wisely. So I think it's very important that for those, you know, for women that do want to get married and have children, to ensure that you find a partner that is very supportive of what you do, is willing to support you, is willing to, you know, help with the kids and you know, and make the household run smoothly. So that one is very important. And 2 is, you know, in thinking about work-life balance for me, my solution was, as I mentioned, I grew up in New York. I chose not to go back to New York, where I lived on Long Island and would have an hour commute to work every day. I knew if I worked in the city and I had young children, I wouldn't be able to see them during the day. So where I chose to stay here at Air Products, where I was always 5 minutes from home. If my kids had a play at school, I could leave the office and be gone for a half hour and watch the 20-minute Columbus Day play. And so I personally never felt like I missed out on all of those little significant milestones of my children growing up. So for me, my choice to work close to where my children were is what made it manageable for me. And I think it's very personal. That might be different for other people, but that's how I managed it.
So I'm fortunate. I have a very supportive spouse. You know, when my children were younger, I did work much closer to where our family home is. And now that they're grown, I do work an hour and 45 minutes from where my home is. And when I took this job, I was offered the job at noon, and I called my husband up, and you know, I left him a message because he didn't answer his cell phone, and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to take this job." And he called me back, and you know, that's your decision. He was very supportive of me because it meant a lot to me to take this job. And one of the things I think that is a job of mine as a mother is I have 2 sons. One's going to be 27 and the other's 24, but making sure that they understand that when they eventually get married, that they need to be supportive of their spouse. And they need to work in partnership, because you know, when you have kids, you're partners in this. You know, I think it was Sheryl Sandberg had in one of her books that two little kids, they were 5 years old, they came into the house. One was a boy and one was a girl. And the little boy said, I'm going to be an astronaut. And the little girl said, me too. I just have one question. Who's going to take care of the babies? Right? So why was that question in her mind and not his? And I think that's what we need to make sure that all of our young ladies realize is this is a partnership, an equal partnership. And choosing your spouse wisely is excellent advice.
So I will say that I totally didn't think about choosing a spouse at all until I was done with medical school. I think I met my husband when I was 20. No, I probably was not in my 20s, okay? He was. I got married at 32, but by then I definitely knew that I could not marry someone who wanted my career to take a back seat or was not supportive of me or supportive of children, or someone who wouldn't move if I moved for a job. By then I knew that I wasn't going to stay in one place, I was going to move for career, and so I did have to find someone that was going to be a very supportive spouse. And I had a checklist, like, you know, will you help with groceries? Will you help with dry cleaning? Will you know, and my husband probably thought I was crazy, but those things were really important to me. And I probably only worked 5 minutes from home, 3 years of my daughter's life, she's 12. I either worked an hour away or an hour and a half away, and so it's been important for me to have someone who would be there, who could drop her off at daycare, pick her up. It's important to also know your family. I stay 9-10 hours from my parents and his, but I was fortunate enough that my mother came and stayed for 2 years when my daughter was really little. She came when my daughter was like 3 months, and then she left when she was 2. And my mother-in-law, until recently, anytime I would travel out of the country, she would come and stay for the week. So it's important not only that you're choosing your spouse, but you're looking at your family and understanding your family dynamics and your in-laws. And it's important to communicate with the teachers. I'm very upfront at the beginning of every school year. I write all of the teachers a nice little note, especially the homeroom teacher. I said, hey, I travel a lot. I'm going to be in and out of the country. You know, there'll be some times where I'm not home for a week. And oh, by the way, like if I don't sign up for parent-teacher conference, remind me. So you have to have someone that's supportive, but you also have to think about the communication a little bit differently. And I've always been really independent. It's really been difficult for me to open up that much and say to the teacher or whomever, I might need a little bit of help with that, but it has worked out really well.
So I just want to reiterate what they've said. I think it's important to marry well. So you need to have a husband who feels as strongly about your career as he feels about his own, and vice versa. I also would ask all of you, as you get to those ages, to raise good sons and to have your sons understand that the women that they marry or the women that they fall in love with have careers. And so it's important to raise your sons well. But I would tell your daughters also, so we have 2 children, and I have been the pickup mom for lots of other women's kids. They've been the pickup mom for mine. I've taken their children home to my house, they've taken my children home to their house, and I've done that for my male partners as well, because I was in a law firm for a very long time. So we all had spouses that worked, and we all had spouses that had complicated lives, so it didn't feel that different for me than it did for my male partner sitting next to me, as he got stuck in a courtroom and I drove an hour to go pick up his kids. So my family didn't live very close, but you can find a support team around you, but be the support for your team as well, and then it will all work itself out. And I think my children, and I've actually asked them this, they hate when I ask them questions like this, but I said, do you think you're better off for having had a mom who worked as hard as I work, or not? And they couldn't. So when your children tell you they're proud of you, those are the best days of your life. So tell your girls to have babies.
Thank you.